And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. My cup is crooked. With toddlers, and I'm Steve Deace. Oh, Aaron McIntyre's here too.
My gun is crooked.
Nice. Gonna be one of those days, huh?
There it is.
Gonna be one of those days. There it is. Yeah. Of course, we are the Steve Deace Show. We are brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. And I know I'm gonna butcher this. You'd think after growing up with a mom for a nurse, I'd be better at pronouncing the names of medications, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. Ivermectin, mebendazole. I think that's probably how that's pronounced, or close. All right. Maybe you've heard about this all over the news and in your social feed. It's a mix of two meds that have been around for years, but combined, it's being talked about right now as one of the biggest breakthroughs in science. Ivermectin, of course, is a treatment for parasites. The other is a treatment for worms. They've recently been tested to treat cancer and have shown that it does cleanse the body of toxins, allows it to heal itself faster. So Jace just launched a brand new use-specific case that's a 90-day supply of compounded ivermectin and mebendazole and Jace can get it to you the fastest and most importantly, the most affordable option on the market. Jace is offering this combination for 35% less than you can find it anywhere else. All right, so get your 90-day supply right now, all right, in the parasite use case from Jace, all right? Enter promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order when you go to jace.com, J-A-S-E, that's jace.com, and enter the code DACE at checkout to get that discount I just told you about, all right? Promo code DACE, D-E-A-C-E, at jace.com. All right, coming up on today's show. Oh, first, I need to tell you about this. All right. We are coming closer to giving you more details on this project I've been working on for the last year. All right. So circle your calendars. June 2nd. June 2nd. All right. Is when we will release Richie Meets the Rainbow. All right. This is Dr. Seuss meets John MacArthur. If John MacArthur and Dr. Seuss ever got together to do a takedown of Pride Month, this would be the book. All right. It is time to prove the old Catholic saying, what the devil hates the most is to be mocked. It is time to put that to good test and good use. So if you want to get more information on this and get on the list to get more information, because more information is coming soon. We're putting the finishing touches on it right now. Todd has not seen any of this. On purpose, I've kept him out of the loop and in the dark for well over a year, just so you could kind of react to this in the same way that the audience does in real time. We tend to do that on the show. Either Todd or Aaron, when I'm working on something, I will, disabuse one of them of getting access to it. Usually Todd, because he's a Catholic and likes suffering. So usually it'll be Todd that I'll pick on, so that you guys can just react to it as the audience does when they first see it. I gave you a little glimpse, a little preview earlier this week, and your thoughts were what?
My expectations are already high. They exceeded them. I expected all of the success. I already told you about this. I don't know if you want me to go into the details of what I told you, but I said, I expect you to exceed on one level, but on the other level, the calling forth of a certain group of people that have failed us, I did not expect that, and it nails it.
Let's just say it's aptly timed to both take down Pride Month and also build up Father's Day, which is in the exact same month. It. All right. So if you want to get on the list for details, all right, and this is going to be my company. We had to finance this ourselves. When you see the book, you will see that even on the right, there were not a lot of, even with all the books I've sold in the last few years, by God's grace, there was not a lot of takers of people who were interested necessarily in in the way that we chose to go about pulling Pride Month's pants down once and for all and shouting the emperor, the pseudo emperor has no clothes. So if you want to get information on this and get on the list, RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com, R-I-C-H-I-E, RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com is where you want to go. That's RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com. And now we want to go to Aaron for the rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the phony narrative surrounding Abrego Garcia, marches on. There are multiple Democrat representatives and senators who are either in the process of or have pledged to go to El Salvador to stand in solidarity with the El Salvador illegal alien alleged gang member deportee Abrego Garcia. Meanwhile, at the White House, here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
Arresting violent illegal aliens from American communities every day. Here are a few examples from the latest ICE report, which I received this morning. ICE Los Angeles arrested a 54-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of rape by threat, sodomy with a person under 14 years, and kidnapping in San Jose, California. ICE Houston has arrested a 23-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child in Cook County, Illinois. ICE Houston arrested a 64-year-old citizen of Honduras convicted of murder in Los Angeles County, California. ICE Chicago arrested a 49-year-old citizen of Guatemala convicted of assault and arson in Prince Williams, Virginia, not far from here. ICE Denver arrested a 36-year-old citizen of Mexico.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is good luck, Democrats.
祝你好运，民主党人。
In other news, according to Penn Live, the suspect in the arson attack at the governor's residence targeted Josh Shapiro due to his perceived stance on the phony nation of Palestine. According to a search warrant obtained by Penn Live, the suspect, Cody Ballmer, called 911 following the attack early on Sunday, identified himself by name and told operators Shapiro needs to know he, quote, will not take part in his plans for what he wants to do to the Palestinian people, end quote. Department of Justice is going to war with the state of Maine over Title IX.
Today, the Department of Justice is announcing a civil lawsuit against the Maine Department of Education. We have exhausted every other remedy. The state of Maine is discriminating against women by failing to protect women in women's sports. Pretty basic stuff. This is a violation of Title IX. The Department of Justice will not sit by when women are discriminated against in sports. This is about sports. This is also about these young women's personal safety.
Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, that country's Supreme Court has ruled that its 2010 equality law defines a woman as a person who was born biologically female. And that's now official that for legal purposes, women are women and men are men. Susan Smith, co-director of For Women Scotland, one of the plaintiffs in this case before the UK Supreme Court. She says everybody knows what sex is. You can't change it and...
Don't mess with Scottish women.
Here, a 4 update. Bloomberg is reporting, citing a source, that China is open to trade negotiations with the United States, but says Beijing wants respect, that Vice President J.D. Vance's quip about Chinese peasants didn't sit well with them, and they want a clear point person for dealing with the U.S., and that they want more clarity as well on the United States' objectives and messaging. President Trump said this morning Japan is in D.C. to negotiate a deal. Joe Biden climbed out of his spider hole for the first time since his ouster from the Oval Office to remind reportedly skittish independents why they swung for Trump.
This new administration has done so much damage and so much destruction. It's kind of breathtaking it could happen that soon.
You've probably heard about that American missionary pastor to South Africa named Josh Sullivan, who was kidnapped by masked armed men right in front of his family during a church service last week. Well, South African authorities say he's been rescued after a dramatic and deadly gunfight with the assailants. Definitely an answer to prayer. And finally, when your opponents are ceding the premise of your arguments, that's a pretty good sign you're winning. Here's Whoopi Goldberg on The View about the Department of Education.
Maybe some of what's happening, like, they're trying to take apart the Department of Education.
Yes.
Maybe that is a good thing, because maybe it will force us to make sure that our kids actually get what they need. Maybe it'll force us to go to our state and say, listen, I want to make sure, since you're taking all this money from my taxes, I want to make sure that my kids get exactly what they need. I don't have to wait for the government to do it. Thank you!
Your terms are acceptable, and that's what happened while we were away.
Good grief. If
What?
that whole thing.
I know we officially have a moratorium on the View clips, but I couldn't help.
You get a papal dispensation for that one. The UK High Court ruled unanimously what a woman is. A culture I mean, if the UK culture is not circling the drain, it is plunging into it. I mean, it's about to be essentially the United Kingdom of Islam, although frankly, that might be one of the reasons why they ruled the way they did, if we're being honest. Trying to grease the skids for their new masters, because they're not tolerating this crap either. I'm sorry, is this on? Okay, I'm sorry, my bad. So I just wanted to make sure I got the last half of Aaron's montage right. The UK High Court ruled unanimously that a woman is a woman, and that sex is binary. And Whoopi Goldberg was like, we should go to our states and make sure they're spending money on the stuff we want our kids to learn. Well,
don't get crazy. That montage started off with a bunch of senators racing to see who can get to El Salvador forced to free the gang members.
I know, but...
do we know if Abrego Garcia is in a gang or not? That seems to be the whole linchpin of this. I mean, it doesn't matter. He was an illegal alien. That's not up for debate. One
of the things that Megyn Kelly said to me yesterday in the 5-minute rundown she gave me on all of this legal case is that, yes, one judge did rule that the evidence did suggest he did belong or was tied to MS-13.
So
yes.
It is 100% a hoax.
Yes, the whole thing is a hoax.
I mean, this has been the most just upside down, chaotic reportage story maybe I have seen so far this year, maybe in the last couple of years.
Aaron's montage brought to you by the new Frontier magazine here at Blaze TV, which you can get access to through Blaze TV Unlimited. It's our new subscription tier. If you want to go bigger and bolder and deeper with the Blaze, get even more VIP treatment, dedicated customer support, exclusive VIP opportunities to events, and more. It's, again, how you can go even deeper and stronger in standing with us here at the Blaze. And you can get a discount right now as well if you go to blazeunlimited.com/Deace. Frontier, full high resolution magazine, the kinds of stuff that our parents and grandparents used to read when we were a country worthy of such magazines and publications. And we're trying to bring that back again as we're making America great again. All right, blazeunlimited.com/Deace. That's blazeunlimited.com/Deace. That's where you want to go. All right, to Aaron, your montage, we will go. And let's start with something that blows my mind. And one of the things that I think you are required for you, we used to talk a lot on our show in its original iteration of 3-dimensional thinking. Know why you believe what you believe. Know what others believe, why others believe what they believe, and then know why others believe what they believe about what you believe. That's how you get to true persuasion. And you make a connection and you get to persuasion, all right? And I think one of the reasons why, listen, we're all born with different gifts, okay? And there are some things I'm just naturally good at that I can't explain how or why. And then there are some things that I'm not. All right. You want to put me on a stage and say, hey, we need you to fill 60 minutes. Impromptu, I can do that. You want to put me under the hood of a car in a driveway and say, hey, figure out why it won't start. I cannot do that. No matter how many hours you give me. All right. It is more likely I will release the engine block to fall on my head, okay, than it is I will figure out why it's not running. Okay. And then there are other people that could just get in there and MacGyver that thing in 5 seconds and then are terrified of getting up on a stage, right? We all have different gifts and abilities, okay, that come from our Creator. And so, some of you are just not necessarily gifted in strategic thinking, and that's totally fine. Doesn't mean you're dumb or stupid. You've just you're good at thinking on other things and about other things. But I do think there's a baseline of strategy that all of us with, higher IQ than Kamala Harris could at least aspire to. But a lot of times I think we aren't able to get there for 2 reasons. Number one, we just refuse to respect our opponents. And we just assume whoever's not on our team is an idiot, stupid, hypocrite, dumb, moron, okay? And, again, to quote the great prophet Bobby Knight, the other team's on scholarship too, right? It's very difficult. Now, what I mean by respect, okay? That doesn't mean reverence. Patton had great respect for Rommel. He was also trying to end him out there on the battlefields of North Africa at the exact same time. He was trying to put him 6 feet into the ground, okay? He respected his opponent, but he didn't agree with him, didn't revere him. He was trying to end him. So, you should respect your opponents, number one. That's Romans 13. Give honor to those whom honor is due, okay? That's number one. But number two is we don't want to contemplate someone may be better at something or know something than we know, particularly if they don't agree with us. And so we then underestimate them again, a second time, and we get blindsided. And one of the things that I've always done from the beginning of my career, and, it kind of helps doing as much corporate media as I did in the original, launch of my career and dozens upon dozens of appearances on MSNBC and things of that nature, is I have spent more time, not so much in recent years, frankly, because the media has gone from calling somebody like me and quoting me correctly, but then, while calling me a racist and a Nazi, at least quoting me correctly, to now I'm just not even worthy of suffering to live like a witch, right? So, it's been several years since I've had these kinds of interactions with enemy media, but I used to have very frequent interactions with them and spent time in their newsrooms and, interviewed for a job at MSNBC at one point in time. So have at least some level of familiarity with their ecosystems. For the life of me, I've got nothing. I have no idea why the Democratic Party wants to make illegal aliens and foreign sadists like MS-13 their hill to die on here. In fact, since none of them are listening to this, and if we say this out loud, I don't think, and I don't think they would take the assistance and know what to do with it. All right. So, if you look at the polling now, who knows how good the polling is? We don't talk about it nearly as much as we used to because we don't think it's as reliable as we used to think. Right. Okay. Right. But that's us at the up here level where the national political parties are. How much do you think they look at the polling, Todd?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit daily. Okay. So all of the polling is showing that there has been, for the first time since Trump took over, a level of unease that maybe the economy is not going to turn around as fast as people thought, and they're not sure what this tariff war is going to do, okay? And so if you were crafting talking points for the Democratic Party to try to reestablish some level of relevance, that would just the math on that would seem to check out, right? Okay. Yeah. Particularly if you're trying to undo Trump's presidency. We talked last week in laying out the various obstacles and then leverages that our side and the Chinese side has in this battle, right? And we talked about the fact that we have the biggest piece of leverage in their reliance on the American consumer. But they also do have some leverage in that the Chinese government's always going to have more runway than our government will be when it comes to the amount of angst it can impose on its citizens, because they can just run them over with tanks, and we can't do that. Okay, and we have a regime right now that doesn't want to do that. The previous regime did. The previous regime would have absolutely ran over you with a tank if they could, but you own 300 million guns, so they couldn't. But they would if they could, and they would if you didn't. Right? But the current regime doesn't even want to do that, even if they could. The Chinese government can do that whenever they want. Okay? Xi's problems are internal problems within his own political mechanism, people that want his seat there in the oligarchical boardroom. It's not going to be some huge uprising of people in Shanghai. He'll just run them over, guys. And Disney and Apple will shut down for a week or two, act like they didn't see the whole thing, and then go right back and turn the lights back on and cash the check, right? And that's true whether it's Xi, P, Pi, Yi, Li. It doesn't matter who the Chinese leader is. They can all do that. So Xi's political tension is within his own Politburo. Trump has way vaster and wider political tensions. For example, of what I'm talking about, the Chinese saying they will essentially negotiate with anybody other than J.D. Vance. Let me tell you what that is about. That everybody understands. The Chinese read blogs too. They can run them through Google Translate, and frankly, a lot of them probably know English better than most of our public school students. So, because they watch things like The View. So, they recognize that Vance is a likely successor to Donald Trump. Okay, this is their attempt to minimize the scope of how much of this pushback they have to put up with for the indeterminate future. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That for a moment in time, okay, to buy us some time to figure out how to get around our reliance on the U.S. consumer base, I guess we'll come and negotiate. But we don't want the potential future president in waiting there, which would seem to indicate this is an ongoing thing we're going to face year after year after year. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So we don't want the crown prince there. We'll deal with the aging king who may be a lame duck in 18 months. With a wink and a nod, but we don't want the crown prince there. We don't want the insurance policy there. Right? These are machinations to limit their own exposure and to widen the political exposure that Trump has. That's where he's exposed politically. He just cannot do to his people and doesn't want to what the Chinese can and want to do. Okay? And by the way, if you missed this yesterday, if you're not a subscriber to Blaze TV, I thought we did the best we could possibly do laying all this out one last time on trying to make this as accessible as possible, this Terror war. So blazetv.com/Deace. If you're not yet a subscriber, go there. If you haven't watched yesterday's overtime yet and you are one, definitely make sure you watch that episode for sure. Okay? All right. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming here. Okay? And so I can see why the Chinese don't want J.D. Vance there. Looking at it from their perspective, turning the lens around from the inside out, from the upside down, I can see why they don't want him there. Right? I can see why they want the aging king on his last lap around the track. They don't want to deal with him either, mind you, don't get me wrong. Okay, they don't want to deal with him either, but they're just trying to run out the clock here until they can figure out if they can replace the U.S. consumer base. J.D. Vance is like a 20-year problem. Trump is a 20-month problem. They don't want to deal with it. They'd much rather deal with Trump than Vance. I can see why I don't know if they're right about that, but I think that's what they think, and I can understand why they would think that. You see what I'm saying? Okay. I have no idea why the Democratic Party is doing this. I mean, I cannot come up with a legitimate reason. So I'm left with cocaine. I've got nothing. It is very rare for me to say, I'm usually not the show you go to tell you our opponents are nitwit, hypocrite, losers, suck at everything, and all we will do is own them today, tomorrow, and forever. That's typically not the show that we do here, right? There are other shows you can go if you want that message. If you want, your fancy tickled, they'll do that for you. Money for click, money for nothing, and your clicks are free. They'll do that for you. Okay, we don't do that here. This is one of the rare times I'm telling you, this is mind-numbingly stupid. I have no idea why they're doing this, and frankly, if it's not cocaine, then I just have to assume that a sovereign God has just put his own boot to their throat, and it's just making them do things that are Romans 1 level of given over, that lack any level of strategy whatsoever, and they're just out of their damn minds. I believe that's a clinical term. They're just out of their damn minds because there's no win here. This doesn't do them any good. There are other issues that they could pivot to. I don't know how effective that would be. I don't know how good their messengers are. I'm not on that team. Okay. But I know this. All right. When I'm up against Nick Saban, I don't go 22 personnel and just my game plan is I'm going to run the ball 50 times between the tackles. No, you're not. Don't do that. You're not going to do that. There's common sense there. I'm not going to just throw Aaron Judge fastballs over the plate every time he's up to bat. That would make no sense if that was your strategy, right? Right. Your catcher just went one right down the middle. Aaron Judge is up. What is this, home run derby? What are we doing here? Why would you do that? That wouldn't make any sense, right? Wouldn't make any sense. I don't care how hard you can throw the ball. If that's all you're throwing that guy, he's eventually going to take a yard, probably a couple times. This makes no sense. It makes none. This is like if we got to script what our enemies had to do and had to own, and that is exactly what they are doing. In the natural, this doesn't make any sense. There's no win here. There's no strategy here. The best I could say is what I said to Megyn Kelly yesterday, that they are desperately trying to come up with an emotional case to counter the Lake and Riley kind of testimonials that have decimated their amnesty narrative in the last few years. And I could understand that strategy. I have no idea why Abrego here is the card to play. That's deuce of clubs. I mean, that's not even a face card. It's not a woman. It's not a kid. It's an MS-13 gang member. multiple courts of law have admitted he has no right to be here. This is the example we would draw up and force them to defend, not the one they would choose. It just doesn't make any sense. I cannot explain this analytically. I don't believe there's an explanation. I think what's happening here is outside of natural forces, because these are the kinds of things that just craven desire and ambition, if you sat down and you thought with any sense of sanity at all, this is not the hill you would die on. We're almost to the halfway point of Trump's first year. And this is what they want to battle. I mean, they're making Mecca-like pilgrimages to El Salvador, for goodness sakes. One of the things I said to Megan yesterday is I was worried the Trump administration would move on too quickly. Park the car. I think I said this on our show yesterday too. Park the car right here, take the keys out, and make them tow you. Well, I'm not worried about that. They want to keep talking about it now. They're just all lining up to go down to El Salvador for reasons. My mind is blown. This doesn't make any sense at all. It's stupid. I mean, that's my clinical term. This is really stupid. There's no win for them here. None. I don't see any way they turn this into a win. This is not even a recent case. This case has gone on since 2018. There are years and years of filings here. Not to mention, even if there was some exception they could point to, read the room, man. Right now, the country's way more in position of, by hook or by crook, just get rid of people. We're tired of it. And we'll figure out if it's legal later on. We don't care. All foreign sadists, gangbangers, all have to go. That's pretty much anybody who would even think, have a single synaptic nerve for a millisecond about voting Republican has that position right now. They're not on. I mean, that's Trump's strongest issue in the same polling that shows that he's experiencing a little economic slippage. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I at this point, this is Romans 1 stuff. You're just so blinded by your debased mind, you just can't even think clearly now. You can't even make a strategic decision when it would even benefit you. You are incapable of it. You have been given over to your own debased mind. Todd, you are nodding your head yes, so I'll hand it off to you.
It's been a tour de force. You're exactly right with that conclusion. And it's why we shouldn't be hopeful about what Whoopi Goldberg said there at the end. Trust me, she's just saying, well, if the experts aren't going to burn everything down for us, we'll just have to realize we go do it ourselves. I mean, they're inspired by the kid who just knifed the other kid in the chest and then now is living bailed out of jail and living in a gated community.
$900,000 home in Plano.
That's what they're inspired by. That level of delusion, because Whoopi Goldberg, the thing she says, it's a good thing if we did. When the white dad was going to the council meeting to say, you know what, that tranny raped my daughter in the bathroom, he got arrested. When I did this stuff, I got the cops called on me twice and 2 cease and desist letters. So parents have been doing what Whoopi's talking about, just not the way she likes it. She wants to go there and burn it all down. They're insane, Steve. They're bad people led by evil demons. And that is the logical conclusion of all this.
So yeah, it is that plus, I guess, minus pragmatism. For a number of years, the Democrat Party has already been that. But they had somewhat strong, somewhat pragmatic leaders. Those leaders are old and frail now. And so now it's just that with absolutely no strategy whatsoever. But I just want to caution you as well. When we had John Daniel Davidson on the program, there are different moments from that interview that stood out, I think, to all three of us. But one that really stood out to me is that his assessment that culture usually just picks what they perceive as the stronger horse. If that demonic, just absolutely chaotic energy, even if it seems just upside down and bass backwards, if that is perceived as the stronger horse, you better be sure that people will pick that, even if it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We have to win now, and win convincingly.
There's a battle going on. Well said, Aaron. And there's a battle happening in Colorado right now. We have to win. We're going to tell you more about it here in a moment. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we are powered by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. I've got two questions for you. Are you unknowingly bankrolling the destruction of American values with every investment you make? Do you know if your hard-earned investment dollars are being used against the Trump administration and really your agenda that is threatening the very fabric of our great country? Your investments, by the way, they should work as hard as you do. And they should also align with what you believe in. So let's build the parallel economy by working with an investment firm comprised of professionals who are patriots just like you. Join the movement of Americans that are using their investments to hold companies accountable for their ethical behavior. Take control of the future of America. Don't get complacent. And you can do that by visiting constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review Constitution Wealth's disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. All investing involves risk, of course, including the risk of loss. I am a client of the firm. This is a paid endorsement. My opinions, though, are my own. All right, folks. We talked about this earlier this week. What is happening right now in the state of Colorado? And just a little refresher course before we get to our guest. Todd, you and I are old enough to remember when Colorado sent a Native American to the U.S. Senate, and he was a Republican. Ben Nighthorse Campbell was his name. Native American U.S. Senator, and he was a Republican. This was a state very similar to our own, kind of purple. Republicans and Democrats could both win here. On the ground, it leaned more socially conservative. But, various economic interest and urban interest, it could go blue as well. Same thing we saw in our state for many, many years until this recent era we're in right now. But whenever you have, and this is, speaking of my home state, this is my concern looking at the crop of gubernatorial candidates and with Kim not running again. Folks, look at what's going on in Florida right now, where the Florida legislature is essentially trying to undo a lot of what led to them having the wins they've had in the last few years. When you have a bad election, and especially two of them, what can happen in your state, particularly with the level of revolution that exists on the American left right now, can change things radically and dramatically. And I think back to a year ago, I went up and spoke to the conservative caucus in the Minnesota state legislature. And these are guys, they're the Republicans in Minnesota, they're used to losing. And even they were like, under Tim Walz, months before anybody thought he was going to be a VP candidate, they were like, we've never seen anything like what this guy has done since he came in as governor. I mean, he made us California in a month. That is what is happening right now in the state of Colorado. We have been putting out the clarion call. All right, where's the church at in Colorado? Pastor Chris Goble has answered it. He is joining us here today on The Blaze. Chris, it is good to meet you, brother. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Steve. As a longtime listener and fan, it's an honor to be with you guys.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We appreciate that, too. All right, so don't appreciate, though, this craziness that's happening in your state right now. If my understanding is what's going on in your legislature is it's a bill that Gavin Newsom actually vetoed this bill out of the California Assembly last year. So number one, Chris, I don't know if the Colorado Republican Party still even is a thing, exists or not, but there's your talking point right there. This is even Gavin Newsom wouldn't sign this into law. But remember, guys, we talked about this a year ago. California Assembly, if parents don't affirm the pronouns, the kids can be taken away. If the parents don't consent to letting the kids get gender mutilated, kids can be taken away. Parents could even be criminally liable, right? That bill came out of the California Assembly. Gavin Newsom vetoed it. A form of this bill, Chris, is happening right now in your state.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Steve. I mean, tell me that you're radical without telling me that you're radical. I mean, if this is something that Gavin Newsom in California has rejected and we are embracing wholeheartedly, I mean, that is an absolute four-alarm fire bell for every person of good conscience and faith here in Colorado. And so what we're talking about here is HB 25-1312. It's part of a slate of a bunch of other bills that are just absolutely from the diarrhea bowels pits of hell. And so myself and a group of buddies of mine who are pastors of small to medium-sized churches all up and down Colorado, from Sterling down to Durango, from Boulder down here to Castle Rock. We finally just got off our group chat and said, hey, if the big churches, if the big ministries aren't going to engage, aren't going to fight this, enough is enough. It's got to be us. And so we are jumping in this HB 25-1312. This would, in your own words, this would criminalize parents, God-fearing parents in their own conscience, their own free speech, and compel them and force them to lie and affirm this sick demonic gender cult and these pronouns. And so a lot of us have been sounding the bell in our churches from our pulpits for many months now. I myself am one of those. But we're looking around the landscape of Colorado and going, where are the big churches? Where's Denver Seminary? Where's Focus on the Family? Where's Young Life? And nobody's doing anything about it. And so those of us, I mean, we're all from churches of like 250 to 300 people, maybe, with very limited resources. And so a couple of weeks ago, we decided to rise up. And if nobody else is going to do it, in the tradition of a small, scrawny shepherd boy with 5 smooth stones, we're just going to do it ourselves and do what we can, because this is heinous and we cannot allow this assault against our God and our people's God-given rights. We would be negligent as shepherds if we allow that to happen.
Amen to that, every single word of that. And I think for people that don't know, I alluded to this on Monday, but for people that don't know, I mean, Colorado Springs is kind of, how would I describe it? Christian conservative Berkeley. In terms of the amount of ministries and those kinds of things that come out of there, right, Chris?
Steve, it used to be. I remember when I was in college 20 years ago, I road tripped out here with a couple of buddies, and I was blown away at Colorado Springs. Having grown up in Southern California and the pagan cesspool that is, I loved Colorado Springs. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like James Dobson land. Like, where do I park and get on the VeggieTales monorail? But really, in the last 20 years,
and we lost the VeggieTales guy too in the last few years. Anyway, I've still got PTSD from that, Chris. But go ahead, yes.
And here's the thing, Steve, we have, because too many of my peers and predecessors in pulpits just like ours have been asleep at the switch, have been negligent. We've bought the lie of secular neutrality, that if we just cower and just Ned Flanders this thing and allow the pagan world that hates God to tell us where, when, and how we can powerfully apply the truth of God's word to our world, then I guess we'll be okay. And so there's too many guys in pulpits and mega churches all over Colorado who for a generation now have been, instead of confronting and fighting back the wolves to protect their sheep, they're letting their sheep get eaten so that they can try to impress the wolves. And so Colorado Springs now, man, I mean, Colorado Springs today is what I saw Boulder as 25 years ago. I mean, it is, and it's a testimony to the fact that the slippery slope of human depravity is just absolutely undefeated. And so if pastors, if good people of faith don't start standing up and say, hey, you know what, fallen pagan world, no, you move. If we don't draw the line, if we don't start surrendering this holy ground of our families, our marriages, the way that we think, the way that we believe, if we don't stop now, man, Legion's going to gobble up everything. And so it's up to us. And this is what we tell people in our group of friends all the time in our churches. It's like everybody's waiting around nervously and insecurely, waiting for permission. Like they're waiting for Gandalf and Ronald Reagan to come over that hill. And we're like, guys, the answer's us. You can just do stuff. And so our group of guys at fight1312.com, it's about a dozen of us that have been in a pastor group chat on Signal for the last couple of years, just sending funny memes and making fun of each other. But 2 weeks ago, we converted my free personal blog to this website because nobody else was doing anything. And so apparently it's been left up to 12 dorks and a free GoDaddy blog to really lead the charge in this fight, which is pathetic. And that's an absolute indictment on these larger ministries, these larger mega churches, one that I used to be on staff with, who have been silent. And their silence is deafening. They have tens of millions of dollars of resources, tens of thousands of people that they reach in their platforms and influences. And it's left to us, 12 randos and a free GoDaddy blog? Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, where are you guys? And so we're doing it ourselves. We've linked arms. We've got nationwide attention. And we are rallying in front of the Capitol tomorrow at 2:30 here in Denver. We invite everybody to come. All the information is on fight1312.com. And we are going to link arms together with anybody who's willing to show up with us and powerfully proclaim the truth of God's word over what is happening in our sick and depraved culture, because we love God and because we love our neighbors.
Amen to every word. And I wish what you just described was unique, brother, to Colorado, but it is not. It is
Amen.
Systemic and acute throughout the fruited plain here. Folks, again, that website, by the way, that Chris just mentioned, fight1312.com. And I'm just telling you right now, I don't care if you live in Colorado or not. I mean, this is a national show. This is why we're talking about this. All right, these are beachheads in spiritual war. All right, the thing you need to understand about the state of Colorado, they didn't just stumble, the spirit of the age didn't just stumble into this. This is the state that took poor Jack the cake baker to the Supreme Court, I believe, 3 different times.
Yeah.
3 different times.
Over 10 years.
For over 10 years. 3 times over a decade. They are well aware of what they're doing. What we're seeing now, we're seeing demonic inversions of the kingdom of God in God's word. For example, Jesus tells the parable of the persistent widow, right? The one who keeps coming back, okay? This is what they're enacting over there. They took poor Jack to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Supreme Court for a decade. 3 different times. They're the ones now acting persistent. With a demonic worldview, they are now carrying out, though, Christian ethical practices and attaching the level of conviction and commitment that we used to have and we used to demonstrate. They are now clubbing us and beating us over the head with it because we just cannot be bothered. Right. Go ahead, Chris.
That is absolutely right. You guys say it all the time. These are the doctrines of demons, and this is the downslope effects of that. And so these are laws. These are blasphemy laws of a counter pagan religion. Amen. Is what it is.
Yep.
It's saying that our religion, our false story of reality, in the tradition of Moloch and Baal, is now ascendant, and you Christians, you plebes, will bow to Zod and be made to care. And so, I myself am a pastor. I've only been here 7 months. Today is my 7-month anniversary at this church. But before that, I was a cop for almost 6 years in the Denver metro area. I'm a combat vet of the 82nd Airborne. And I've said this 1,000 times, man. It's the same fight. I've changed uniforms, I've changed context, but the problem is sin and depravity. And so this week, Holy Week of all weeks, man, me and my buddies, we are so proud and rising to the call to fight a holy war this Holy Week because this crap cannot stand.
You just simply cannot share a culture with your kids don't belong to you, but they belong to us, and we can do whatever we want with them. And if you defy us, then we can do whatever we want to you. You cannot share a culture with that. That has to be resoundingly defeated and removed from the public square. That cannot be accommodated on any level whatsoever. And I think people that have maybe read a history book for more than 10 minutes, every single time totalitarianism in various forms, fascism, Nazism, communism, whatever the ism is in which it takes form, it always turns the children into agents of the state and against the parents. That is a hallmark of every single totalitarian regime. In fact, the project that I'm teasing right now, I have coming out on June the 2nd, Richie Meets the Rainbow. That's one of the things that Richie and his family has to learn to push back against. It's exactly what you're describing, frankly. And we wrote this manuscript like a year ago. Okay, so this is always a hallmark to totalitarian regimes. You can call it a brown shirt, whatever you want to call it. All right, it's taken various iterations throughout the ages, but they always co-opt the children, Chris, and turn them against their parents and into agents of the state. That happens every single time.
Yeah, and what drives us crazy, Steve, is that, we have these mega churches all over the Denver metro area, all these ministries up and down the Front Range that are silent, and their silence speaks volumes. And so, Ezekiel 33 says, "But the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any one of them. That person is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will require at the watchman's hands." Mm-hmm. And we have too many milquetoast, watered down, K-Love neutral, softer side of Sears, Ned Flanders wannabe churchy TED Talk pastors in our pulpits all up and down Colorado who are deafeningly silent as they're coming for our kids. I mean, this is the modern day Valley of Gehenna. And what we're seeing is that the shepherds, these men who are charged by God with holy mandates to be watchmen, to be shepherds, to wield the shepherd's club against the wolves, are too afraid because the 11th commandment apparently is thou shalt not offend the cool kids. Mm-hmm. And so we need to let the wolves devour the sheep because we got to impress the cool kid hipsters, right? And so we're functionally like insecure 8th grade girls, and me and my buddies are freaking sick of it. And so we're doing everything that we can. We invite all good men and women of conscience. Visit us at fight1312.com. You know, I'm down here at Ridgeline Community Church in Castle Rock, Colorado. We talk about this stuff often. I talk about this stuff from the pulpit because our people have to be discipled. And when we don't disciple our people in the powerful truth of God's word, this is what we end up with.
Amen.
And so culture is cultus, which is just the outward expression of what a group of people worship. And what we're seeing now worship is just Day of the Judges type stuff, man. And it has to end now.
All right. So they're throwing down the Gideon's fleece, guys. These guys are in. All right. So we put out the call. Hey, where's the church at? Well, it's right here. So if you want to join that fight, the website you want to go to is Fight1312, the number. All right, 1312, fight1312.com. That's fight1312.com. This is a fight. This has to be stopped and snuffed out in Colorado. It's already been exported from California to Colorado, and it's coming your way if we don't stop it right here. All right, fight1312.com. Pastor Chris, it was a pleasure to get to know you, and hopefully next time it's under better circumstances. Brother, don't be a stranger, all right?
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it. Hey, let's have some pumpkin spice together, brother, because I love it too.
All right, there you go, Erzin.
No.
He was a cop and airborne. How you like them apples?
No.
All right? All right, thank you, Chris. God bless. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Give them all the
Appreciate
pumpkin spice they can handle. Fight1312.com. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I've got 4 daughters, so I've had 4 iterations of 8th grade girls. And I didn't want my 8th grade girls to act like 8th grade girls a lot of times. I definitely don't want our men to. He absolutely nailed it in that they're utterly distracted. They're constantly involved in a popularity contest. Who likes me? Who doesn't? Most men of all of history, by now, for this kind of stuff, we all know it's true. There would have been blood in the streets, and it wouldn't have been ours.
Boy, listening to that interview was like listening to the Steve Deace show. It was like doing an air check of the Steve Deace show because you could tell he's a longtime listener. Good for him, though. And I appreciate it was a very confrontational, but not a douche-tastic way of just pointing out, hey, we're just 12 dudes or however many dudes on a group chat. We're just going to take a stand and see where the chips may fall. Mm-hmm. Don't really care if the bigger ministries, the bigger names aren't really coming to Gondor's defense here. We're going to do what's right, and we're just going to let the chips fall where they may. May that be the posture of every single man in this audience within the sound of my voice. Just do the best good you can with the platform and tools that God has given you, no matter how small those tools are, or big those tools are, or broad or vast those tools are. Because if that was more of the posture of every single man in the sound of my voice,
game over.
It's game over.
It is. I don't say this very often, but one sign of hope in this battle may have come from the Gospel Coalition website. Now, I don't think I've said that since like 2006, okay? But apparently this has penetrated their veil, and they've actually, in a milquetoast way, brought this story to the attention of their audience, all right? So maybe we are building the critical mass needed to defeat this. All right, let's keep it going. Fight1312.com. That's Fight1312.com. Buy, Sell, or Hold is next. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Toddlers and Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel as well, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you love the podcast version, thank you. We love you because you're the biggest part of our audience. So please make sure to hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple and iTunes, follow. Thank you if you've already done that. Leave us a 5-star review, whichever podcast platform you prefer. Right now, our last 2 episodes are both in the top 20 overall in the religion and spirituality category on Apple. One of the biggest categories on Apple. So thank you guys very much for that. Let's keep that going and keep those 5-star reviews going on the show as well as keep going with our support of Preborn and this partnership and all the good that it has done. Last year alone, Preborn's network of clinics rescued over 67,000 babies from being murdered by their moms. And I would take it even further and say they may have rescued that many moms' souls and psyches from what that does to the conscience, to what that does to either sear it or convict it, to crush it. This is ultimately a battlefield as well. Your generosity here at The Blaze went a long way to hitting that number last year. So let's keep that going. You know, your tax-deductible donation for as little as $28 sponsors an ultrasound that doubles that baby's chance at life. And there's even more that we can do. You can donate your best gift today by dialing pound 250 and saying the keyword baby on your mobile phone. That's pound 250, keyword baby on your mobile phone, or go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve.
You ready for this?
Let's roll. And here we are, the tournament that America really cares about and really needs.
So this is the one we need.
Your heart's just beating out of your chest right now.
I can't wait.
I'm wearing a freaking suit.
What is 15 times 4? 15 times 4.
Gosh.
It's 20, 23.
I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now.
Yeah.
But in our country, we need you to be mamala of the country.
Where HIV is now, like, if you are undetectable, like, you don't necessarily, like, have to disclose that. I don't think you're putting anyone at any risk that you have to, like, necessarily go through that, but it's because of the stigma and shame that I feel like I have to disclose. People would look at that as betrayal.
Some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them.
Your ancestors came on the Mayflower.
No.
You are descended from one of the 101 people who sailed on the Mayflower.
Oh man, how'd you get in here?
I'm the Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, we're banning porn nationwide.
The only ones that should be deported are the white people because no white people actually belong in this country.
So where are you going? Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Climate change is having a disproportionate effect on the physical and mental health of black communities.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. And I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. But if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone.
I look like someone who has a mental disorder? I mean, some people would say that in the affirmative, but that is a rhetorical question.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
That is one shining moment as it has never been seen before. I'll say that.
Kazoos are clearly the trumpets of hell.
Yes, with a synth kazoo. Yes. Is that to avoid copyrights? Is that what that was?
Yep.
A synth kazoo? Here's the other thing. What if you had a one shining moment and there are no shining moments? What happens with that if there's no shining moments?
Well, this was one Marxist moment. I mean,
there you go.
Kind of felt dirty a little bit.
Because it was.
Yeah.
It was. So there can only be one champion. 32 bids when this began in March. And now we sit here. There can only be one champion, Aaron. Who is it?
It's the very last video in that montage. For Hamas, the #1 overall seed, defeating the National Cathedral Witch.
She gave it a good ride, and not just on her broom. I mean, Cinderella story. It's a Cinderella story. She took it all the way to the finals. But not even with a J.D. Vance facial expression meme could she pull the 85 Villanova upset here, the 2010 Butler. I think it was 2010 Butler. She couldn't do it. And in the end, the #1 seed and the #1 overall seed in the field, correct?
Yep.
For Hamas. Just too big of a load there for the witch. And for Hamas. They get it done. Todd,
appropriate.
Todd, your thoughts?
I mean, this is what we didn't plan it this way. Didn't plan it this way. The guy who tried to burn Josh Shapiro's family alive, we learned today.
Yeah.
That he was doing it for Hamas.
For Hamas as well. Yeah. Because he also believes in this. There's something about believing in the make-believe place known as Palestine that just makes
people crazy.
Makes people crazy. When you just completely believe in a make-believe place called Palestine, no one walks out of that philosophical exchange a better person after that. So, Todd, what do you think? In the end, and we can't blame NIL for this one. Chalk wins out, brother. Chalk wins out.
Oh, no, this is just clearly pure... The pure way the game was meant to be played, Steve. That's what we saw here. Everybody gave their worst best or best worst, or I'm not sure how to say it anymore.
I think we all agree for Hamas gave it their all. I think we can all agree on that.
And I think we've spoken things into existence, said the things that have needed to be said over and over and over again, despite whatever rules or regulations there may be. But they're their words, and that there's an important lesson in that. Maybe the most important lesson. Hold them accountable. Believe what they say. Otherwise, you'll get steamrolled. They just proved it right here. If you don't stand in the way of this, it doesn't matter how crazy it sounds. It doesn't matter how logical it sounds. It will win. I think there's a way bigger lesson in all of this gamesmanship than I even anticipated learning.
So congrats to for Hamas and to all of you who simply voted for them just so you could make it safe to say on the air yet again. Because in the end, I think the value added of being able to say that word again in public, I think that overcame the value added of the J.D. Vance facial expressions that carried the witch this far. Fair?
Fair.
I mean, what if we had called her the retarded witch? Maybe then pulls the upset. I guess that's the other big word everybody wants to be able to say again, right?
But what was the vote on this, Aaron?
It was like 52-48.
So this came down to the wire.
Yeah.
This came down to the wire.
That puts a couple more seconds on the clock. You never know.
It does. It does. Yeah. Puts for Hamas at the free throw line a little bit more. Maybe they kind of, shall we say, pucker there in the final seconds. I mean, what do you think, Todd?
It's just... I just like no nuance. It actually defies. You just said earlier on the show you can't just run off tackle. That's what they just said. This is who we are, and we are going to run off tackle.
Right up the gut.
Yeah. I hate this Abbott and Costello routine so much. So much.
And from that, we go to buy, sell, or hold. All right. This is where you have given your submissions to Aaron. And Aaron has selected them. We have yet to see them. Todd, you and I are going to see them right now. We will buy them, sell them, explain why. We'll get to as many of these as we can. The rest we will deal with in the overtime today. And of course, the hold is available. The hold is available, but it is considered really a smear of emasculation for you to punk out by utilizing it. So you have to essentially be debased for the debasing of your own mind whenever you choose the hold. Your penalty this week, Todd, for choosing the hold is you have to find out who Lindsey Graham's favorite player is on the team on for Hamas. You have to figure that out.
As bad as that is, somehow that feels cleaner than what I just endured. So, but no.
Yeah. Ditto. All right, Aaron, let's go.
All right, we will begin with this from Sergeant Holka's Big Toe. The tariffs work, and within 2 years, we will either have no taxes or it will be 10% across the board.
I'm going to sell because you've got to repeal that amendment. And that's a Herculean chore to do that. Now, let me tell you one way you could do it quicker. If you had a convention of states and you threw the, which amendment is that I'm thinking of? Is it the 16th?
16th.
All right. If you threw the 16th Amendment onto the docket there in a convention of states about whether or not to have that repealed. But, I mean, you're going to have to repeal that amendment. I think, anyway. Otherwise, well, let me rephrase. Could you pass a statute? Could you fail to collect taxes? You could do that. But are you guys comfortable with replacing tariffs as a revenue stream, not repealing the income tax, and then handing the White House in the future over to Democrats? You see where I'm going with this? Because that just sounds like a double whammy waiting to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a fags for Hamas just waiting to happen to you is what that sounds like. All right. So I think you've got to repeal that amendment. I think if you want to replace, if you want to go back to the system we had prior to the income tax, I'm fine with that. But that means then we got to repeal, I think, the amendment that gave us the income tax. So I like your concept, but that's why I'm going to sell.
Yeah, I'm fine with the concept. I think it's going to take longer. I think this is something that Trump shows some success on. And some stability on, and then it'll be J.D. Vance's turn to make this come to life.
I also do think, though, this is a smart talking point by Trump.
Sure.
All right, to remind people, hey, we had a government for about 140 years before the income tax. How did it run? What funded it? Okay, that kind of stuff. All right.
Next is Live Free, who says Jeffrey Epstein was actually working for Ghislaine Maxwell and not the inverse. Epstein had exhausted his usefulness when he got pinched and simply knew too much. That's why he got suicided and why she got a cushy prison, quote unquote, sentence, and why not one pedo client has yet been arrested.
That is fascinating. I've never heard that.
I thought too. That's why.
You did?
Yeah.
I've never heard that proffered anywhere before. I'm fascinated by it. You guys see she's suing for release? No. Explain to me, she is. Well, explain to me, if she didn't human traffic anybody, then why is she in prison? I mean, we don't know who she human trafficked to, right? So, I mean, unless they can tell us, if it would seem to me that the only reason you have Ghislaine Maxwell in prison is you can verify she human trafficked to somebody, right? Mm-hmm. You would have to know, therefore, then who those somebodies are, right? Okay, yes. Then just tell us who they are. Then you would have to know. Otherwise, what is she in a prison cell for then?
They're the people on the list are the people who put her in jail. So,
well, there could be that. You know, I think this is fascinating. And, you know, sometimes I think when we go down these roads, you know, you guys, I appreciate it, but I think sometimes it's trying to be too smart by a half and, you know, and doing your own version of the reverse magic bullet theory, you know, and there's too many commas and stipulations. But in this case, I'm fascinated by this one. I'm willing to entertain it. Okay, I'll buy. What about you, Todd?
I can accept it. I mean, so he was front of the room, she was back of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Next is John. Chief Justice Roberts' attempt to maintain the integrity of the court will ultimately lead to a confrontation with the executive branch under President Trump, which will result in a greatly diminished judiciary for years to come. That will be Donald Trump's legacy.
I'm going to buy because I want
Justice Roberts' legacy. I'm not sure.
I'm going to buy because I want this to be true. And as I've explained to you guys over the last few weeks, I have no idea what amount of clout or capital I have. I was on the wrong side in the primary, so who knows? Okay, but whatever it is, I got some. I mean, I have a pretty large platform, so it's not like I have none. The general rule, by the way, on clout and capital is you don't have as much as you think you do, but more than your detractors prefer. That's the general rule, okay? So I've got a fairly large platform on a fairly large platform. So I have some. I don't have none. I don't know how much that is. What is some? I don't know. Some a little, some a lot, some. I don't know, but it's some. And so whatever that sum is, I'm exhausting it all on this post right here. So because it lines up with my current missiology, I'm going to buy. I want this to be true.
Todd?
I want it to be true, but I'm going to sell. There's more of a 40 years in the desert aspect to getting through this thing. I mean, just a generation of people need to die. Remember, I asked a deacon friend of mine who's now probably deep into his 70s, and he just said that my generation that's leading the church, it just needs to die.
Next, we go to Christy King. We will start having random outages at our utility companies and ports across the country due to Chinese hackers in response to this trade war. Add sabotage from military-age men who cross the border. All as a thinly veiled threat that they have infiltrated us and can attack from within.
I would not dispute this. I mean, they're going to play some cards. And they have cards to play. Okay? They have cards to play. So whether it will be as dire as what Christy says, more so, whether it'll be different things than she described, okay? But even the little one today, we'll talk to you without J.D. Vance. All right, we don't want to discuss the possibility of this being some long-term reimagining of our relationship. We'll put up with a temporary. Again, I'm speaking in the Chinese, terms. We'll put up with a temporary Trump temper tantrum. He's got a short attention span. He's all over us right now. If we satiate him now and slurp and slobber enough, he'll forget the whole thing and be on to something else that'll distract him later. Right? That's probably what they're telling themselves over there in Beijing. Right? Okay. That's why they don't want J.D. Vance around. They don't want this to be some long-term reassessing of the relationship. But listen, guys, the last time we did this, when Trump was not nearly as serious, frankly, as he is right now, they unleashed a chimeric virus on the world. Okay? So I would not just instantly dismiss what Christy is talking about here whatsoever. So I will buy on the spirit of this. I don't know about the letter and the specifics of it, but they have cards to play, and they have shown in the past they will play them. So I'll buy.
Yeah, you had me at unleashed the virus. Buy.
Next, we go to Veni Vidi Velcro, who has this: top 10 bands, not singers, so excluding Bowie, Elton John, etc., that anchored the British invasion of the 60s and 70s and are still making new fans today. We'll start at number 10, Cream. What is that band?
That's Eric Clapton.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
In the white room with black curtains. That's where he got his start, was there. Okay, so there's a couple of other big-name artists that were in that band, too, who I can't remember. So if you're putting them, they had a very limited shelf life, but if you're putting them there, though, because of who the band members are and what they, like, especially Clapton, went on to do elsewhere, then I'm okay with it, so I'll buy.
Sure.
Number 9, Deep Purple.
I mean, it's one of the greatest guitar riffs of all. Is there a white kid that's more than 3 months old in America that doesn't know that guitar riff, honestly? I mean, so I don't know if the rest of their song catalog belongs there, but okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. I can't think of who'd be missing. So that's kind of my barometer. So if I can't think of that, that's fine.
Number 8, Yes.
They're a little bit like the British invasion, Grateful Dead. And that they have a very dedicated following, but not a ton of big hits on the charts.
I could say the same thing about the Grateful Dead. Like, I recognize the name of this band, but I can't think off the top of my head of any of their songs.
Like, they had one number one song. They had one album where they tried to go really commercial when we were kids. Do you remember in the early 80s? And there was a song off that album that did go to, like, I think number 1 on the Billboard chart. I just can't remember what it was called.
I can't remember it either.
You know what? Critics would probably put them there, so okay. All right.
Number 7, Genesis. Totally agree. Maybe even higher.
Yes. Yeah, maybe even higher. Although looking at I'm not so sure where else they would go.
Number 6, Queen.
Yeah, I don't deny that. Yeah.
5, The Who.
If anything, maybe higher.
Todd, just burst in whenever you have something to say.
Yeah, just keep going. I can't argue with this.
Number 4, Pink Floyd.
I mean, dude. I mean, David Gilmour's wife was a literal poet laureate. and consulted on their lyrics. Okay, so that's where you get some of those lyrics of the tremendous lyrics. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl year after year. Okay, so yeah, they belong on the list.
Number 3, Rolling Stones.
I mean, by some people's measure, they're the greatest band of all time, so.
Number 2, Led Zeppelin.
By some people's measure, they're the greatest band of all time.
Yeah. And number 1, the Beatles.
By some people's measure, they're the greatest band of all time. So, yeah. Yeah, I think that top 7 is pretty solid.
Yep.
Okay.
That's some kind of list if Genesis can legitimately just be 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next, we go to Tyler Brown. We are past the point where our republic can be saved while operating within a constitutional framework. The only way to save the republic is to suspend the Constitution.
I would not suspend the Constitution because
following the Constitution is these days unconstitutional in many cases.
Yes, I would not do that for the simple reason is, let me put it this way. If we had a more Christianized culture, I'd be more in favor of this. But if we also had a more Christianized culture, we wouldn't be having this conversation. All right? There is not enough that unites the right to do this. There just isn't. Now, I also don't believe the Constitution is a suicide pact. Okay? We don't believe that either. I don't believe we follow some fourth level of spirit of the constitutional norm while the other side is, defecating all over it. But we have very few things on the right now that bind us together into any form of a cohesive resistance and fighting force against the enemy. And even in its currently tattered state, that is one of the only things that we have left. I would not dismiss it at all. No.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't choke myself with it either, for that matter.
It may come to that, but I agree with Steve. Just remember, a lot of people who voted for Trump, they don't do it because they fundamentally want to be citizens. In fact, like I've said, they oftentimes resent it. They just want to be left alone. And that ethos is the one that allows the demons to ultimately take over. What you're talking about would upset the comfort of so many people, and they would blame the people on the right who brought this to pass on them, even though those people would deserve it, and it might be the right call.
Next, we go to Brad Novak. Katy Perry's space mission was filmed on the same set as Neil Armstrong's moonwalk. Have you seen this? This was everywhere last night. Everybody was just saying, no, it was fake. It was all faked. It was all staged.
I'm going to sell. It's funny, though. It's funny. And plus, I don't want to get beat up by Buzz Aldrin. Is he still alive? Because he could whip me.
Is Buzz still?
I'm confident
I think he might still be alive.
I'm confident if he is, he could whip me in any current vegetative state he's in.
I'll sell.
I'll buy. That's why I'm going to sell. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to buy that Buzz Aldrin could whip my rear end. I'm going to buy that. Yes. I'm going to buy that. Yeah.
Okay. When I first saw this next one, I dismissed it out of hand. But then I thought about it a little bit more. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Nigel Fullerton says Angel Studios will overtake Disney as the premier family entertainment studio within the decade.
I don't think this is unfeasible because I think it is on the table. We just discussed this in the Deace group last Friday. I think it is on the table that Disney is could have an IBM Ma Bell level collapse. I mean, if you hopped into DeLorean to 1975 and told people that in 1985, when the movie Back to the Future actually came out, and you told people that Ma Bell and IBM were no longer going to be a thing, they would have looked at you like, "What you talking about, Willis?" They looked at you like, you need drug tested, and the summer of love has been over for a while, pal. Get back to work, and yet here we are. All right, I do believe that level of collapse is on the table for them. Especially if the Avengers relaunch with bringing Robert Downey Jr. back and members of the original cast, if that isn't $1 billion property, I mean, this is the last card left for them to play. Hardcore nostalgia. If that doesn't do the kind of numbers they need, I could really see a free fall happen at that point. Remember, we're in an era now that 20th Century Fox doesn't exist. It's one of the original, OG movie studios. All right, so this stuff can happen. The Angel part, to me, they're best positioned to take advantage of that. But the only thing that gives me hesitancy is at that point, I could see a Sony, a Universal especially, with what they're doing with Epic Universe. They're working very closely with the governor in Florida to grow the tourism area. I could see a company whose market cap is well ahead of Angel Studios at that point saying, "Hey, all right, we'll take that from them." You see what I'm saying? I mean that they would start with a head start over Angel Studios with the pre-existing resources that they have to say, we will gladly take Disney's branding from them by doing more of the stuff that they were once known to do. But if your analogy is that Angel could be like the Bill Gates here to IBM, I don't think that's totally off either. Sorry, I'm kind of verbal processing this out. I'll sell, but I don't think it's nuts. I'm going to sell because I do think, particularly Universal, companies with greater market cap, I think, would jump in and say, we'll own that space moving forward, rather than letting an Angel come in and compete with them too, would be my guess.
I'll sell them. The men aren't disciplined enough to make this happen. I mean, if this is legitimately on the table, the men should go out of their way to make sure the Marvel properties that patronize them and just take their money so that they can still be fed slop with that money, we'd make sure we're not falling for that anymore. But like I've told you before, the women are more on both sides. The leftist women don't want the princesses anymore, and the women on the right aren't playing this game either, and that's why Snow White tanked this time. The men are not that disciplined. They are going to make sure that those movies succeed, and that's why this isn't possible.
So I read this a different way. Angel Studios will overtake Disney as the premier family entertainment studio within the decade. So you could read it in a sense that maybe they've already done that with, Angel Studios. Would you dispute that, the volume of their production is not as much as Disney? They're not releasing however many Disney movies come out every single year. But in terms of the quality, they've been hitting dingers, you would say, by and large, at least more at a better rate than Disney. I kind of like Bugatti. Do you know what a Bugatti is? It's a supercar from France.
Okay. Yep. I know what a Fugazi is.
But a Bugatti, you don't know what they are. But they're really, really good. They're the fastest production car on the planet, or at least they used to be.
Okay.
But you don't know who they are. Okay. Small company. Citroën. You know what Citroën is. Mm-hmm. Very large French car company. A lot more units sold. A lot more profits in just because of the volume of what they are. The Citroën suck, though. That's kind of how I read this.
Okay.
So they are the Bugatti to Disney's Citroën.
I love Aaron's French car analogies.
I do too.
They always land.
I was just telling him before the show, we need more of those.
Yes.
Yeah. So analogies out the wazoo, or however you say wazoo in France. Next, my transitions are really slow today. Corey Senich says, professional golf is the most difficult competitive sport. Only yourself to blame, mentally focused for 3.5 hour round, 4 days of competition, reading greens and the wind.
So,
you're going to sell?
Yeah. I'm going to sell.
All right. You've got a daughter competing at a high level. I'll defer to you. I think he makes a strong case.
It's
marathon running, that's a little...
It's not an easy sport or anything like that, but I don't, it's... The ball isn't moving for starters. There's just
Fair enough. It's a very small ball. It's a very small hole. It's very far away, but I hear you. Okay. All right, we'll come back. The weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will join us. Newt Gingrich says tax cuts. Chip Roy says spending cuts. Which side should we be on? We'll discuss that and more with Daniel here in a moment. Stay tuned. Remember, we're going to do the rest of Buy, Sell, or Hold in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. This portion of the show brought to you, though, by our friends over at My Patriot Supply. You've heard me talk about them for years because that's who I trust to help secure my family's well-being. Just got the yard spring cleaned for spring and summertime, and sitting there in the shed is my emergency food supply from My Patriot Supply. When I finally decided, hey, I got to just stop talking about them and be a doer of them, after what I saw go down in Western Carolina last year. Well, now you can get the best-selling mega 3-month emergency food supply for the same price as the standard kit that I have. All right. So that's more than $360 of real beef, chicken, farm fresh fruits and vegetables at no extra charge. Even better, this kit now bolsters up to 2,500 calories per day, more than any other emergency food supply I've seen out there anyway. And let's be honest, when things go sideways, you're probably going to need more than just survival. You need strength, energy, real food. This kit is there with that when you need it. And you hope you never do, but just in case you do, it stays good for up to 25 years. Ships fast and discreetly. If you've been waiting for the right time now, this is it to go in. Go to preparewithdace.com, claim your mega kit while this offer lasts. All right, that's preparewithdace.com. Again, head over to preparewithdace.com. And we head now to the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation. Our good friend Daniel Horowitz. It is good to see you again, brother. How are you? Nice tie, by the way.
We are doing all right, Steve. Yeah, I mean, we've come formally prepared.
All right. So I saw a guy whose presidential campaign I once worked for. And for my age group, I kind of started coming of age at the end of Reagan, but really the early to mid 90s, that would have been the era of Russia Newt. Okay. And so I don't get tickled by very much, but, and I kind of get tickled by the fact I know Newt Gingrich on a first name basis, being a kid growing up in that era. Okay. So I see Newt say, hey, we cannot get in the way of tax cuts. And then I see one of my very best friends, all right, fire back at Mr. Newt, all right, saying we can't get in the way of spending cuts. I got to tell you, and the timing of asking this question, I just had to write a $20,000 check to Uncle Sam on top of everything he took out of my check all year long. All right. So I'm kind of seeing things Newt's way right now, not going to lie, as much as I love Chip. Okay. I'm kind of thinking it ain't my responsibility to balance their budget. All right. They're taking enough of my money, but this is where we will defer to the prophet of woe and lamentation. All right. Who's right here, or is it more complicated than that?
Chip is right by a mile. I mean, old habits die hard. And from Newt's era, they know of one thing. We're now on round 7 since Reagan, since 1980. We're going to come in, Steve. Our most important thing, no matter what is going on, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut taxes. Okay. We increase spending. Next time, come in. Most important thing, we're going to cut taxes. So we've done this 6 times. And this is number 7. But something happened in between 6 and 7. Okay, that was the printing of anywhere between $8 and $10 trillion. What Republicans have failed to give over to the American people, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Just in the 3 years, 21, 22, and 23, the average family of 4 has had to pay an extra $33,179 to afford the same standard of living. You kind of project that out to 24, which already occurred in 25, which we're in. You're going to have, by my estimates, close to $70,000 more dollars. This is what they've failed to convey, that the current budget is not a spreadsheet issue. It's not a conservative think tank issue anymore. It's not a them problem. It's an us problem. Most people are paying more in the cost of living from the spending than they're paying in taxes. That's number one. Number two is, Steve, if most people were like you, small business owners, then both policy-wise and politically would be a little bit different calculus, because you come on either quarterly or, tax day, and you either write a check or you get a check. But here's the reality. The reality is, because of 6 rounds of tax cuts, but continuing in the structure of a progressive income tax, and because of the politics of the issue that they didn't want to get hit with tax cuts for the rich, Republicans have had to disproportionately cut taxes at the bottom more than the top each time. So I just want to give you some numbers I pulled from the Tax Foundation. I did some math here. If you look at the average effective tax rate in 1980 versus today by income group, and again, each person's situation is different. If you're like me with 4 dependents, with Trump doubling the child tax credit last time, you're going to be at the lower end of this. But the bottom 50, their effective tax rate is 3.7%. Now, it doesn't include local property or federal payroll, but federal income tax is just 3.7%. They pay on average 39% less than they did in 1980. Whereas you get to the top 1 to 5%. So not the top 1, but let's say 1 to 5. Okay, people earning hundreds of thousands a year, families maybe earning $300,000-$400,000 a year, they only pay 14.7% less than they did in 1980. So in other words, the bottom 50 got, let's say, 3 times a greater tax cut. The point, a lot of them don't pay anything. Some actually, get back more on net. So the problem we have is, absent repealing the income tax completely and shifting it to something else, you're stuck. Taxes are sort of like a Vietnam now, or like back surgery. Once you get into it, you can't get out, because the only people that pay a significant amount in taxes are the ones that neither party wants to give it to. So politically, you have a major problem here. There was a time you could have done the Steve Forbes flat tax, but after 6 tranches of incremental progressive tax cuts, there's no real good way of doing it. And finally, Steve, number 3 is, this is the first time that Republicans aren't even proposing anything transformational. So it's about $5.2 trillion over 10 years in tax cuts. The majority of it is just the continuation of the status quo, which, let's face it, the economy hasn't been that great. And then you have these random weird things that are not going to affect you. Tips, overtime, Social Security benefits, which I actually think is a fairness issue. I've supported it. Massey and Ron DeSantis actually had the original bill before Trump supported this. But let's face it, it's not going to spawn economic growth. It's people who are retired. And then the final component is, you in Iowa are going to subsidize a massive tax break for New York and California and Illinois residents. That is essentially the GOP plan. So when you weigh that versus the urgency of cutting spending, aka the $70,000 more that you've been paying the last 5 years in cost of living, I sided with Chip that spending is the issue of our time.
I hate you. And then secondly, what are the odds? What are the odds that Chip's going to win this argument, do you think?
So, to the extent that he would win it to do anything really transformational, 0. The question is, does he get the $1.5 trillion in cuts over 10 years that will probably be reversed in the out years by a subsequent Democrat Congress? Trump and Thune verbally agreed to it in a negotiation, but nonetheless wrote just $4 billion onto the Senate side of the instructions. But I mean, here's the deal. Just today I saw a bunch of rhinos came out and said, you better not cut Medicaid. I mean, we're all for cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. That's what they said, in improper payments. But you better not, and by the way, what Trump agreed to wasn't even reversing the Obamacare extension of Medicaid. It was simply, meaning it's not that able-bodied adult males can't get it. It's just you have to have some sort of work. Okay, that's it. So that's what they're against. Then a concurring letter, some overlap, said we need to be very targeted in our, what did they say, our energy investments. They wouldn't use the word wind, solar, but you get where they're driving at.
Yeah.
So the point is, no, they're not going to cut spending. No.
Is there a thing, just real quick, hardcore politics here, because a lot of this to these people is perception more than actual, tangible numbers that you're talking about. Is there a number of surface cuts they could do that would, because I think what Trump ultimately wants is the Fed to lower interest rates more than anything else, is what I think he ultimately wants. So is there enough surface cuts they could do, that would do enough with inflation on some surface level to convince the Feds to cut interest rates? Could they at least, does that number of perception exist?
Steve, I'm just a schnook here. I mean, I got a finance degree, but, I haven't practiced. But I'll tell you who to believe. Gold.
Yeah.
Gold
it's up $100 today. Somebody texted me a minute ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Gold is telling you something. Gold doesn't believe it. And I think money talks, everything else walks, and gold is the thing doing the talking. China's buying it. The European central banks are buying it. No, I mean, it is such a dumpster fire, Steve, because it's not just the Medicaid. It's multiply that by every welfare program, and they feel the same way.
That's just one entitlement. That's just one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's no welfare, obviously no Medicare and Social Security, no VA, no military. And in fact, Trump just came out with a request for $1 trillion a year in military spending. It's $876 billion. Now, I don't know if that includes the mandatory spending that they're going to have for defense. And then he's just kind of like dividing that by year, or if that's something new. I don't know. The point is, it's not being cut. So then you're left with the sort of Doge things that I'm just going to tell you straight up. I know it's not popular. Elon said it's $150 billion this year. I'm just going to tell you that's a bald-faced lie. That's just not true. It might be more like $50 billion that's accounted for. It's just not true. And the proof is in the pudding, because they won't put it in any bill. If that's recoverable, they would put it in. In fact, Steve, $150 billion, you know what that is multiplied by 10. That's the magic 1.5 trillion.
Right.
You would get it right there.
Yeah.
So clearly this friction that they have is not over an accounting, it's over actually doing it. So, and that's fine. Just don't tell me you're cutting inflation.
All right, we have a 3-minute warning here. All right. Second thing I wanted to ask you about. We were pontificating on this off the air. I just posted it on X. I want to get your thoughts on it. RFK Jr. out this morning as Secretary of HHS with a pretty exhaustive study and data on what's happened to autism in recent years. And here are the factors we're looking at, blah, 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 blah. He said in a cabinet meeting last week that, and Trump even said September may not be a good month for people like Pfizer. Even Trump said this in response to what RFK Jr. said. All right. I have a hypothesis. Tell me if you think I'm right or wrong at all. That RFK Jr. is just eating a series of poop sandwiches on a lot of other things. Because if the genesis of the so-called anti-vax or alternative health or medical freedom, whatever you want to call it, the genesis or the MacGuffin or the impetus for it was really the spiking of autism. Nicole Shanahan will tell you. I mean, that's what happened with her own child. That's how she got involved in this. Okay. And that this is kind of the genesis account of this entire, subculture here. And he's going to cash all of his political capital on pointing to the true roots of this. And until that rolls out, he's just eating a series of crap sandwiches to save his political capital for that rainy day. Do you think there's anything to that?
So we have to see what he says today in his announcement. I think what will determine that is what winds up getting implicated in the cause of autism. Is it just maybe the food, environmental stuff, chemical exposure, or do vaccines get rolled into it? If it does, then yeah, that would explain the sort of silence on the vaccines the last number of months and not going after mRNA. I will tell you that as we're speaking, gosh, you're about 12:45 Central Time, another 2 hours. CDC's advisory ACIP committee will be voting on a bunch of recommendations with flu, RSV, and meningococcal. So that will be interesting to see. So far, the committee doesn't appear to be fundamentally that different from before, but I don't know. I will just say this. One of two things is true. Either what you're saying is true, that he's saving it for something big, or, he wouldn't be the first person that he's
just the most disappointing, but he wouldn't be the first.
One in many figures that believed very strongly in something, but when you get in the big chair, it's like that Israeli leader that's like, I'm going to annex Judea and Samaria every time. And when they get there, they don't do it. So that's the question. I mean, he's been very emphatic as an NGO leader. Operating at that level while governing is something only a few people in a generation do.
Good stuff, my friend. Good stuff. Well, it wasn't, but it was good to see you, even though it was not good stuff. Thank you.
Happy to deliver.
As always. Yes, as only you can. All right, Todd and Aaron, your thoughts here. 2-minute warning on the show.
That conversation that Daniel just had about taxes versus spending, ultimately, I keep coming back to the fact that we were told this is all for a moral and religious people and no other. They can have that conversation that Daniel's having. This current population can't. Even most of the people on the right can't. They don't want to. They resent it. And that's where we're stuck.
Yeah, I want you to be wrong. I mean, experience hath shown that you are probably right. However, to tease coming up on the overtime, we're going to do bonus buy, sell, or hold. I have finally actually done my job for once, and I've actually used my brain to come up with a buy, sell, hold submission that has to do with this. It is simultaneously Vanta Black when it comes to what's going on with Congress as far as tax cuts versus, hey, let's just keep on spending like the status quo is the status quo forever and ever. Amen. I want to ask you guys something, or posit my own submission for buy, sell, or hold coming up in overtime as it pertains to congressional spending.
What were your thoughts on Daniel's analysis that rolling back the COVID era spending would actually have a greater impact? Essentially what he is saying, it would actually have a greater overall benefit economically to the average American than even another tax cut would overall. Well, it's just a tax cut is easier politically to do, frankly. Yeah.
This actually cuts to the chase of what I was gonna ask in overtime, because I think that is true. Not right now, but I want you guys to check me to see if I'm just doing some copium here.
Okay.
Well, it's not just financial, it's also psychological. A lot of times we just have to go back. C.S. Lewis talks about this a lot. That's what I want to do it for that reason as much as anything else.
Yeah, we've created a system that incentivizes covetousness.
Yes.
Okay. And theft. And it's called social justice, but tithing with other people's money is theft. Okay. And so since we've systemized this level of immorality, you would need a moral people to unsystemize it, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're stick around, finish buy, sell, or hold in the overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. Until then, Romans 8:28.